Do you know how important it is? My name is Karen, and if this is the first time you're watching, welcome. In today's tutorial, I am going to show you how to create a glass vase and what an ellipse is and the importance of it. So let's get started. So before I show you how to actually do a glass vase and explain in a little bit more detail what an ellipse is, I'm going to create a background to put my vase on. So I'm going to be using my flat brush, and I'm going to get some crimson red and some carbon black, and I am using professional grade acrylics, but you can use any kind of acrylics and it will work just fine. So I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab some red and grab some black, and I'm just going to move back and forth, adding a little water occasionally. And I'm not going to mix it completely up on my paint palette. I'm going to let some of the mixing happen on the canvas itself. And if you ever run into a problem when you're painting and you're seeing a lot of canvas come through, you need to get yourself a little bit more water mixed in with your paint so that it spreads easier and covers better. And by not mixing it on my paint palette, now I have some wonderful little pops of color happening on the canvas. Now as I get towards the bottom, I'm going to make a decision that I want a table here. So I'm going to have it be a little bit darker down here. And this will be the area that my table is. And we're just about done. Let me just come up here and put in another little pop of red right along that edge. And I kind of like doing my edges too, so I'm just going to come in and give them a little coat. check it, see if there's any little spots left, and there is a little bit up here, so I'm gonna just kind of go over that. And now we have our background ready. So we will wait for this to dry. So I'll see you back in 1 second. Okay, so our background is dry now. So I'm going to explain to you what an ellipse actually is. An ellipse is basically a tilted circle. And it kind of looks like this. There's the lower and there's the upper. And it has rounded corners. Oftentimes people will make a mistake and do it with pointed edges, which is more like an eye. And sometimes people elongate the sides and make it look more like a rectangle. But it basically is a tilted circle. One way that I like to encourage people to do it is to first start off with a smile, and then do a frown, and just make sure that your sides are rounded. So I'm going to start now placing my vase, and I'm going to get some white. And I'm just going to come down, and I'm going to start and first figure out where I want the lower part of my vase to be and where I want the top to be. If I were to be putting flowers in this, I want to make sure I have enough room at the top. So I think I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to start with my smile, and then I'm going to do my frown and make sure that my sides are rounded. From there, I'm going to come in a little bit and out, basically putting little parentheses. And then the particular vase I'm going to do, it's going to need another ellipse down here at the bottom. So I'm going to come in right off of here, and I'm going to put another smile and another frown. And from there, I'm going to basically do a big parenthesis on that side and on this side, each facing opposite directions. And I can come in, I got a little bit too much paint on there, and I can just pull some of that away with a wet brush. I don't want it too wet to be runny, but I can thin that line back out by just coming in from the side and taking it away. Now, here at the top, I'm just going to have a smile and another frown. And if I want to have this come up more, I basically am going to do the same thing again on the sides, but not so drastic here. I'm going to bring them in a little bit on each side. So basically, they are like the opposite parentheses, back to back. And then along the top, I'm going to have another ellipse, but the top opening, because of my angle that I'm viewing it, I'm not going to be able to see it as well. So it's going to be a little bit narrower. So it's barely a smile, but I still have rounded corners, and then I will bring that over. So there we have our basic shape for our vase. Now what I want to do, I'm going to take my filberts brush and I'm going to come in and just start putting in some shadowing. So I'm going to get a little bit of this black with some white, and I'm going to make a little bit of a gray, and it's not going to be that thick, okay? It's going to be kind of thin. And I'm going to come in and I'm just going to kind of go over my edges, and I'm looking for the mid-tone ranges now, the colors that are the in-between. They're not the darkest darks and they're not the lightest lights. And I'm going to lightly put over, and I'm going to even go right over this lower section, and you want to make sure this is dry before you do that. We want the glass to be like you could see through it. So I'm just going to move this around, and I'm just putting it in where I see my mid-tones. And I see some mid-tones down here. Start with my darkest dark tones first. And oftentimes I do start with the darkest darks first. But let me go to some of the darker darks now. So I'm going to get some of this black. And down here in particular, there's pretty good amount of some darks down in the lower section here. And right along up in here, there's a darker tone. Now I'm going to come in with some white, and I'm looking for where I see the lightest lights. And I'm just going to start popping those in now. So I'm kind of determining where my light source is going to be coming from. So if my light source is going to kind of be coming from this side's going to be a little bit more illuminated. So that's why it's more bright on this side, but I still will have some reflection because this is glass on this side. And I think I'm going to put a little bit more white right in there, just a little touch. And I will see some dark area right underneath this lip, and maybe a touch over here, and of course underneath the vase we want to make sure that it has a dark area. Now if my light source is coming from this direction, then I want to make sure that I have a darker area over here that may be the shadow, even though this is very dark already. What I can do is I can lighten up this area just a touch with a little bit of the red. So now we have a glass vase. Taking another look here, making sure that we have our darkest darks and I'm basically, when you're doing a vase, if you're looking at life, you're just looking for shapes. So I'm just looking for and then we're going to go over it again just a little bit, and we'll put a couple of flowers in just to make it look a little bit more special. So we'll do that in just a minute. Now that And I'm going to let it set a second so that it will kind of set up just a little bit, and I'm going to soften the edges. So now the water is going to have a greenish hue to it, a greenish blue. So I'm going to actually take just a little bit of this white, and I want to come in and just give this a little bit of a green hue now. And now I can soften this edge a little bit. And I'm going to start coming in and putting my stems in. So let me get some black, a little bit of green, or yellow I mean, and maybe a touch of this red. I'm going to come in and figure out where I want these to be. Rinse my brush off. I'm just kind of going into design mode now. I'm laying out my flowers. So now I'm looking at my background, and it's a deep red color. So I think I'm going to get some yellow and add some green to it. Rinse my brush off again. And we're going to take some of this dark and some of this green, some of this yellow, and I'm going to just kind of put some darker tones right here for the flower that I'm going to put there. Maybe it'll have a couple here, and maybe I will have a little bit more of an orange red. And I'm just going to take this brush and I'm just going to touch it. Now maybe we'll get a little bit more red. And I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I'm going to get some of this yellow again, but this time I'm going to add a little touch of blue to it. And come back over here. Kind of come in front. make it some white and grab some of this yellow and green. And maybe I'll have one of the flowers right here in the front. Maybe we'll make that one a little bit more pink. So we'll grab some white and red. We'll mix up a nice pretty shade of pink. I want to come in the center and start off with a little dark right here in the center of where our flower is going to be. And then I'm going to come in. I think we're going to add a little bit of an orange tone to this also. So we're going to kind of work from the center out, and I'm just lightly touching. Now I have some of this pink color that I'm going to put in. Now you can see that it doesn't have a lot of detail in there. I'm just blotching out some color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my round brush. I'm going to come in with some white. And I'm just going to start working some of these outer petals a little bit. Now I'm going to get some of this lighter yellow and green. And I want to come along in here and on the one side where I know that my light source is, I'm just going to lighten the right side of these stems up just a little bit. I'm going to come back in and with a little more orange in the center here. I'm going to kind of come up here too, and this is just kind of laying on here now. Let's give this some definition of what's actually happening here. Let's find our petals. Now, if this side is darker, so I want to smooth this in, get that white blob off of there. Maybe I'll even add a little touch of black. I think I'm going to put a little bit of blue. Now I'll come in with just a little bit more white now and just I'm going to use my palette knife to come into the edge here. Now we're going to come up here and do this same thing. I just want to kind of smooth this out a little bit. Make sure I have my petals the way I want them to be shaped. Let's get a little bit more dab of this orange color in here. And we'll come in and just between where these petals are, make sure that we give a little separation with just a touch of black there. Gonna get a little bit of white now and just kind of blend that in softly. And if you can see, if this is my bright side, I don't want that light, so I'm going to come in and correct that. That actually would be darker than that side, so I'm going to come in and darken it up with some black and red. So we still need a stronger sense that there's water in there. So I'm going to get my round brush again, and I'm going to get a little bit of this yellow and green. And we're going to go over the whole thing. Oops, I got a little blue in there. Don't want that. I'm just going from where the top of my waterline is in the back and down. And now that I've done that, I'm going to look again now, and I'm going to see where I might have some white spots that I need to put back in. So I'm going to get a little bit of this white, and I'm just going to show maybe there's like a window that's reflecting nearby. And we'll bump this up in brightness right there just a little bit. Now, to soften my edges so that they don't look so bright, I really don't want all of that brightness because you wouldn't see that. I'm gonna tone this down a little bit along the edges just by going over it with a thin layer of paint. And this side definitely would be a little darker because this is our shadow area, so I can take a thin layer of black and just go over that end. Maybe even down in this lower section, it would be a little bit more shadow. I think we're going to bump this up a little bit more. Now, I can take a look at my composition and just kind of get an idea of if it's pleasing enough to me. I can bump up this table again with a little bit more pop of red. Maybe right here we have a little bit more pop of red. rinsed my brush, and I'm just going to kind of soften it a little, blend it a little. Maybe I'll get it right up to the vase right there. There'd just be a little bit of lightning back here, not much. Now if I wanted to, I could add some other interesting things into here, maybe some little sticks of some sort. If I take a little bit of white, there's some little sticks of some sort coming out of here. Or we could put leaves on these too. Just lightly touching this. Little wiggle motions to kind of make it like the little squigglies. I could put little little ball flowers coming off of this. Maybe I'll take a blue and a white. Maybe some green. I'm going to use my round brush. I'm going to take let's get a little bit of a dark base in here. Come in with creating some type of little ball flower. Maybe this side will be a little bit brighter again because that side is more in shadow. Add a little some places too. Now over on this side, it's going to be darker, so I'm just going to take some of this blue, tap it into where I have the black. And now we take a look at the composition and see what we think, if there's any areas that we need to touch up or anything, and this would be when we would do our touching up. I'm kind of thinking that I want to put some leaves in the lower section here. So I'm going to take my Filbert's brush. I'm going to get some blue and some green. A little bit of black. I'm just going to touch in these areas and kind of create some leaves coming out. This side will be a little bit lighter, so I'll lighten that up in a minute. Get a little bit more. Some of our greenery comes down like this. And I think that's good. I'm going to just lighten up this side right there a little bit. And maybe I'll just pick up a little bit of this yellow to do that, and just come in with a little bit of lightness there. Looking at it now, and I'm just really seeing, you know, you always get a sense that there's more that you can do. So I just want to really look and take a minute to make sure that I'm satisfied. I do think I'm going to subdue this little part right here, and just by getting a little bit of black and just softening that a little bit. And I could also come in now with a little bit of white that's thinned out. And I know I darkened this before. I just want to put a really thin layer of white down here. And you can always really, like I said before, you can always feel like there's more you could do. But this is what an ellipse looks like and the importance of it. So I think that's going to be good enough for that demonstration, this tutorial for you today. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Did you learn something? Post it in the comments below if there's something new that you learned. I would love to read about it. After all, I'm doing these tutorials for you. If you're new here, don't forget, subscribe and hit that bell button. That way you'll get notified when I post new videos. And don't forget to give it an old big thumbs up if you liked it. It would certainly be an encouragement to me. Well, until I see you again, happy painting.